The poor Dark Knight is now at the bottom of the tank totem pole due to Stormblood's update. No longer are they essential to any comp when you can get a warrior for off-tank damage and paladin for a solid defense. And since the Dark Knight was just the half-brother of both the warrior and the paladin, it being used is now whether or not you can handle the situation. Are you an okay defensive tank or are you an okay offensive tank? I want to put everyone's worry at ease, for I will explain, at least how I go about it, a good way to keep the Dark Knight at least a most minimum of relevance. And I already know that some of you may think that this video is kind of pointless. I mean, the Dark Knight not relevant? That's dumb and stupid! This guy probably doesn't even know what he's talking about. And in terms of hardcore rating, I'm not the best when it comes to that advice. All I can give you is a comfort zone to help you feel better for choosing the Dark Knight over the warrior and the paladin. So before I even go on with this video, I'm sorry, hardcore community, I am not as pro as you. So to start, you probably are at the end of the line at this point, so I'm going to assume that you're at level 70 and are already raiding and doing dailies to get higher tier gear. Okay, now that that's established, how would you like your Dark Knight to be spec'd? Meaning, where are your materia being focused on in terms of your gear? Although what I do doesn't pertain to everyone else, you can expect your gear to be filled with strength and vitality. So that's 2 out of the way. What about the other stats? Well, if we use myself as an example, I place 2 stats as the highest priorities, tenacity and direct hit. Well, as of 4.1 that is. For the most part, your armor already has enough tenacity, but there is room for more. Tenacity is pretty much the stat that involves damage taken physically and magically. The higher the value, the more damage you deal, more HP recovered from healing magic, and the less damage you take. A stat specific for tanks. I find this as the stat needed for those defensive players who wish to survive over dealing damage. So if you are a defensive tank, go with tenacity. If you're a full on tenacity, you could go determination to pick up the slack. However, you lose out on defense if you do. The next stat would be direct damage, which affects your physical and magical attacks. The higher this stat is, the higher your damage is slightly. What it really does is raise the frequency of your hits, which can make for a good thing if hitting your enemy gives you health, magic, or a gauge. A high damage, though slightly, has been told to be able to reach 25% more damage if all materia slides are full, so don't look down on that damage, especially if you're the type who's offensive. So if damage is your deal, go direct hit, and if you're full on that, go for crit damage, which affects how frequently you hit with crit damage and how much you can restore health with healing skills. Obviously, if your faith is in that critical hit, well, go for it. So this is completely off script, and I'm going to sound very unprofessional, and I do apologize for that. So I went around the internet looking for any information involving direct hit and critical hit. I eventually found pretty much like tens and dozens of posts involving comparing the two. I eventually found myself to a Reddit post that actually showed a graph and compared the two, saying that direct hit isn't all you should be focusing on, and it'll actually explain that there is a cap for both direct hit and critical hit. You can actually go both depending on how your party is swaying. If they're going towards critical hit, go critical hit. If they're swaying towards some sort of damage but not towards you, you can go direct hit. Just basically saying that you don't have to 100% focus on direct hit. In fact, it's very interesting. If you want to go both direct hit and critical hit, they show like a little bit of a thing here, but there is a cap for both, for direct hit and critical hit. Not sure where the cap is for both. As of right now, people are saying that you should go direct hit. If anything else, other people will say go critical hit. I myself, I did kind of a mix between the two. I'm not really focusing on one or the other because your party composition, and especially mine, which is a bunch of randos all the time, you never know if they're going 100% crit or 100% direct hit. So here's a graph. I'm going to leave like a bunch of links in the description if you want to check those out, and I'm going to leave it up to you guys. Thank you very much. Back to the video. So in terms of the Dark Knight skills, I would say experiment with the skills that you're familiar with and the rotations that you're comfortable with. Sometimes your rotation may mess up in raids and dungeons, which is the reason why there are test dummies everywhere in the world. And also make sure that your cross-class abilities are okay. Speaking of, the cross-class skills are up to you to choose, but if I were to go with default choices, I would choose Provoke, Convalescence, and Rampart. These 3 skills should really stay in your hotbar. Rampart not withholding. For dungeons, I would suggest Ultimatum as one of your go-to skills, as it's basically an AoE provoke, and Shirk switched out for Ultimatum as it's pretty much needed for trials and raids. And again, if you have a problem with any of your rotations, say hello to the training dummies because they will be your best friend. But I will note down some very important skills that you need to know. One is Dark Arts, your bread and butter. I've heard from literally everyone that Dark Arts Power Slash is utterly useless, and I argue that it isn't 100% useless. This combo is good enough to be used as an anchor to lock down aggression and steal aggression from other players, if you're feeling kinda cheeky, that is. Provoke is well over the major priority over Dark Arts Power Slash by a long shot, but just in case you need to steal back aggression and lock it down, it's not a bad move if you need to keep up. Not saying that you'll use it a lot, but it is an option. Soul Eater is your HP regainer and your gauge increaser. Remember, you need to keep up with your health and especially your gauge to be more effective. Dark Arts combined with Soul Eater makes it more damaging, but doesn't increase the amount of gauge you'll receive. But what does are Blood Weapon and Blood Price. Appropriate because the gauge is being filled with blood, and it is called the Blood Gauge after all. Blood Weapon is your main offensive stay, only being used outside of Grit. Blood Weapon makes any hit you do gain blood in your blood gauge. It also does that with MP, the other resource that's precious to you. By the way, how many times did I say blood in that sentence? Blood Price is a defensive skill used in any mode and gains you a small amount of MP and blood each time you get hit. Never forget this skill, especially when you are the main tank. For those who wish to know the timer and wish to see the cooldowns for your major abilities, I would suggest making clone icons on a different hotbar blown up so that you can see it. Both skills get a time limit extended when Delirium is used, but remember, you need blood to use Delirium. Both get a good boost, with Blood Price getting the better treatment. Remember Delirium, for this skill can be used to help regulate Blood Weapon and Blood Price for a good MP and blood gauge management. Also, never forget Carve and Spit. I'd leave this skill as an MP gainer while in tank mode and used as damage dealing in off tank mode, meaning Dark Arts Carve and Spit, while it does mitigate the MP gain, your damage potency does go up exponentially. The other and newest move you need to thoroughly understand is the Blackest Night. Basically a stone skin for yourself or stone skin for another party member. The catch to this skill is that it lasts for 5 seconds, but the cooldown is 15 seconds with good range. It also gives 50 blood to your gauge when the shield breaks, making it great for blood management and giving you more chances to use two important moves, Quietus and Blood Spiller. Quietus is what I would say is your crowd AoE MP gainer, used for when you are low on MP and are surrounded by a mob of enemies. Depending on how many surround you, the MP gain could be small or fucking humongous. Word of warning, do not ever use this with less than 3 enemies in a mob. It becomes a pointless move if you do so. On a side note, remember that Abyssal Drain is your go-to AoE aggression skill. Unleash is okay while surrounded, but Abyssal has distance, it's stronger, it has the better Dark Arts combo, especially in crowds being an HP gainer, though not on the same level as it was before Stormblood. Now Blood Spiller is your go-to offensive attack, being your most powerful skill hands down. While in off-tank mode, it has 540 potency, while in Grit, it's 650, but don't be fooled. Remember, Grit reduces your damage by 20%, and adding that with the 650 you do, that's a grand total of 520 potency while in Grit. Not all that bad, but fuck, man. If nothing else, Blood Spiller is still your goal whether you're the main tank or not. As damage is still damage, be sure to know when to use Dark Arts, as it still takes a chunk of MP every time you use it. Whether it's for damage, aggression, health, or gauge, Dark Arts is still your best friend, especially with Soul Eater, Blood Spiller, and Carve and Spit, off tanking or not. Also, as an FYI, Dark Arts Dark Passage still has some use. That's up to you to find out when and how. I can't hold your hand for the whole ride, but at least I can give you some pointers on what I deem important for keeping a Dark Knight relevant as a tank. Not saying that they aren't entirely, but they're becoming more of an option than a viable choice. Hope this helped in some way, and if it didn't, well, I'm sure you guys will tell me in the comments below. As a reminder, I do stream over on Twitch every now and again. Who knows, I might be streaming right now. Go and check out twitch.tv/Syncweaver, or head to the descriptions below for a link. See you there. And as for you Dark Knights out there, stay strong. We will make our comeback, or at least prove that we're needed in battle. We just need to get ourselves a tempered will equivalent and we should be good. Whenever that fucking happens.